London Mayor Sadiq Khan's ultra-low emission zone, or ULEZ, was expanded to cover the whole of Greater London on Tuesday. The scheme, under which cars which do not meet stipulated emission standards have to pay £12.50 a day to drive in London, has huge implications for the whole country and has aroused enormous debate. And on Friday, the Met Police announced that over 500 crimes involving stealing or damaging the ULEZ cameras have been recorded in just the last 5 months. Here to discuss this, I'm joined by the founder of British Weather Services and author of upcoming book Surviving Extreme Weather, Jim Dale, and the deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. So, Jim, can I come to you first about this? So, what are your views of ULEZ expanding to Greater London?
Well, as a meteorologist, we look at the environment, we look at the air, we measure it. This week, we're going into a little bit of a heat wave, as you might know by now. So that's going to be subsiding air. That's going to increase the pollution, whether you like it or not, or whether ULEZ is there or not. So that's going to happen. But I'm a big believer to be honest with you, I don't think anybody wants pollution. It's not a case of wanting pollution. I'm in favour of pollution. Nobody is. Yeah. OK, so it's how we get rid of it, step by step. And I think ULEZ is part of that. It's part of it. Not just ULEZ, by the way. Also, other cities in this country and towns are going in a similar direction.
So you'd like to see ULEZ expanded across the country?
Yeah, I think ULEZ has got a bad name, if I can say that. It's become quite personalised, and I think we have to focus down and say this is more about better lives, healthier lives, rather than saying this is ULEZ, this is Sadiq Khan. So it's beyond that, and I want good health for everybody, and I don't want, as you'll find out this week, walking down, say, Marylebone Road or something, even with ULEZ, you're going to struggle in terms of the emissions that are put out, that are poisonous emissions from cars, from vehicles. Nobody would doubt that. No science would ever say that that's the opposite and we don't need to go there. What the problem is the financial side. And I would say one thing about the financial side, and that is this all started, and pollution starts, fossil fuel starts, with the fossil fuel companies. If you want the money to compensate those that have been disenfranchised by ULEZ, then I would suggest you knock on the door of the fossil fuel industry, who are earning billions.
Well, let me just bring in Fraser at this point, because I want to ask about whether or not you feel that ULEZ is effective to tackle precisely the kind of problems that Jim is outlining.
Well, one of the interesting things about ULEZ is that there's a lot of debate over the science. A lot of the science that Sadiq Khan has been using has been shown to have been fiddled in some way. So Sadiq Khan got Imperial College to produce a report. It was paid for by the London Mayor's office. It said all the things the London Mayor wanted to hear, that, pollution was killing 4,000 people prematurely a year, that outer London is the worst place for pollution, and therefore, ULEZ expansion should go ahead, and that will dramatically help people and save lives.
But you're not implying that he paid for those answers?
No, but then subsequently there was another report came out from the same university, from Imperial, a different group of researchers, and they were looking at the inner London ULEZ, and they said actually it didn't really make much of a difference. It didn't really cut nitrogen levels that much, and therefore it doesn't really make sense to make these kind of bold claims. Then the London Mayor's office gets on the phone to their original scientist, says, can we arrange a rebuttal? And they put out a joint statement saying that it's going to dramatically decrease pollution and it's going to save lives. Right. And then there have been other cases where a previous study, I think it was from 2018, Queen Mary University, said that the ULEZ, which was the precursor to ULEZ, which just tackled lorries, vans and buses and coaches, that also found there's not going to be any effect on children's health. And so the Mayor's office rang up the scientists saying, you shouldn't publish this work, we should change the conclusion.
Really?
They essentially said you should, why are you saying this won't have an effect? That can't be right. And the scientists, good on them, stuck by their report. So if this scheme is so brilliant, if this scheme is going to dramatically transform people's lives in London, then you have to ask, well, why is the Mayor and City Hall essentially trying to bully scientists who disagree, or trying to have the findings of research changed in order to fit
Does this concern you, Jim? If it's the case that actually ULEZ doesn't really make a difference, and if it is the case that City Hall are putting pressure on scientists, I mean, surely you wouldn't support that?
Well, first of all, I'm reticent about going into the political area. There's a political argument going on. We can see that quite clearly across the spectrum. So I'm more coming from the scientific point of view. And make it clear, scientists argue from time to time. They have throughout.
Yeah, they don't necessarily agree all the time.
No, they don't. That's how we make progress. That's what happens. Somebody says one thing, somebody says another. My idea or my theory is better than your theory.
But specifically,
that's how we move on.
But when Sadiq Khan is saying, I reject, he's not a scientist, and he's saying to scientists, I reject this. Can you change? But can you change your mind, please?
I don't know where that speech comes from. I don't know that. It's not. I'm not in the position where I can say that happened or it was the right thing or the wrong thing. All I would say is the direction of travel as far as reducing pollution is concerned is the right one. I don't think there's a person. I was at I was out on the streets in Bromley on Tuesday with the team from GB News, and many interviews, and many people came up. And some of them were anti, some of them were pro, they shook hands and all the rest of it, and we went in that direction. But nobody turned around and said, look, we want pollution. But I keep coming back to this.
Yeah,
this is something...
But I don't think people are saying that as such. I think what they're saying is that they're concerned that if these are ineffective, and yet they're paying £12.50 a day, that's I think, the concern.
It's every little helps, as the saying goes, every little step. And that has been the case throughout history as far as science is concerned, as far as this. Now, if there are arguments going on with the politicians, absolutely fair. But fair enough. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at the environment, looking at the science and all the rest of it, it's indisputable that if you take the worst polluting vehicles off the road, then you will get a lower pollution.
That's a fair argument, isn't it,
I think
Fraser?
Where Jim is right is that no one is in favour of pollution, but what people are in favour of being able to drive their cars. This is a tax that is going to hit the poorest Londoners. The Mayor's own research shows that it will disproportionately hit poor and disabled people who don't have the kind of options to use public transport. If you're thinking about certain professions like carers or builders, people who are small tradesmen, they don't really have the option to switch to public transport. It's very expensive to switch to a new or an electric vehicle, and the Mayor's scrappage scheme certainly doesn't cover their ability to do that. They might buy a car on credit even, but, we're in a time of very high interest rates, so that is going to be very difficult.
Fraser, can I just say that the poorest people in London don't have a car. Let's make that absolutely clear. They walk most of the places, and those are the ones most exposed. If you look at any scientific graphs, it's the poor that suffer. 1 in 5 people in the world, if you take the world, of deaths die of some kind of pollution. In other words, whatever it is.
Those facts are wrong.
OK, final thought from Fraser, because we've actually got to wrap up now.
No, I just think it's really important to defend people's right to drive and to be able to go about London as they see fit, or elsewhere in the country, as we know these schemes are proliferating. It is important that people have mobility and that their travel isn't impeded by and that their cost of living isn't pushed on them.
OK. Well, this debate, no doubt, will go on and on, but we have to put an end there. Thanks ever so much to Fraser and Jim.